Welcome back to the Functional Femme, the podcast where we break down the science of functional medicine, holistic health, and the tools you need to thrive. I'm Jen Hennessey, co-host alongside Dr. Sunita Mann, and today's episode is a personal one for me. For most of my life, I've struggled with weight loss, trying every diet, every plan, and facing the ups and downs that so many people know all too well. But now, at 40 years old, I'm finally in the best physical and mental place I've ever been. And a huge part of that is thanks to Dr. Mann's expertise in medical weight management. Through peptides, proper nutrition, targeted supplements, and a science-backed approach, I've been able to lose almost 100 pounds, not just losing weight, but truly transforming my health. Today, Dr. Mann and I will be breaking down my journey, what made this time different, and how her guidance can prove real, lasting solutions for weight loss and overall wellness. If you've been struggling with your own journey, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back everyone. So today I'm joined with Dr. Sunita Mann. Good morning, good afternoon.
Good, yes, good afternoon. How are you?
Good, how's it going?
Good, doing well.
Good. So like we said, today is about a lot of people's favorite topic, which is weight loss, or one of many people's not so favorite topics, which is weight loss. As I've said, and I think the previous episode, we touched base a little bit about the medical weight management side of the practice that you have and how you help me. And we briefly discussed it, but we didn't really dive into exactly what is the medical weight management, what it entails, what you offer patients, and Rejuvenate as a whole, and what we do to help the patients in their own journey. So I'm going to discuss briefly my journey.
Absolutely.
And we're just gonna dive right into it. So my whole life, as I've said, I'm 40 years old. My whole life has been a battle with weight loss. I remember as early as third grade being very aware of my weight, being very aware of my appearance. That scale has always played a huge part in my life, and that number, not only the number on the scale, but the number on my clothes was always made to be a big deal. I've always struggled. I was put on every diet known to man, you name it, I've been on it. I've seen a nutritionist in middle school. So I've always had an idea, I've always known to eat based on a diet. I've never really been able to come to a point in my life or in my diet or in my food where I was comfortable just eating to eat. So fast forward many years after, I lost weight by working out and eating right, and then the weight would just come back on because old habits, and I didn't work out and I didn't do the right things and I wasn't properly guided. So people would make me fear fruit, or people would make me fear certain things, or only eat chicken and salad, and that's it, and that's all you can eat. And so when you're a young kid, you see all your friends eating these things, but then when you're just given grilled chicken and salad, you tend to want to binge or hide what you're eating behind your family. So I fast forward, I think the heaviest I was right after both having my boys. I was about 270 pounds. Lost a lot of weight by eating healthy, following those portion container things and exercising regularly. During COVID is when I lost a lot of my weight because I stopped working to stay home with my son for that year and teach kindergarten, which not for me, but I did it, and I got to a point in my weight where it stopped. And I wasn't able to go further than that. I was like stuck at a certain weight, and I was like, why am I not losing any more weight? And I just got very, very discouraged. And then I fell off track again, and I had gained more weight, and it was really, really difficult. And that's when I started working for Dr. Mann, and then me and you had to have a conversation about wanting to help build your practice up again, and we were like, let's use me as a tool. And while I had tried everything in my life, I was nervous, I was hesitant, and I said, all right, listen, if I've tried everything under the sun, why not try this? And this is from someone who is fearful of taking Tylenol for a headache. So I said, let's do it. And that's when you and I sat down, and I went for my blood work and everything else, and we discussed the injections, and it truly has been my saving grace. Like it has been the best thing I've ever done, because it's helped me get over that plateau. And I remember you saying to me when I first started doing it, it almost tricks your body and like, no, it's not supposed to be here. It can go there. And I think too, and you have had that discussion, a lot of people feel with this medication though, you don't have to eat healthy. And like, that's one thing where I always told you, and I tell your patients that talk to me about it, you have to change your lifestyle along with it. If I went into this thinking this was like a quick fix or a magic pill, I would have continued eating how I was eating, and while the medication does what it's supposed to do, you're not going to be healthy.
Right.
So that's what I always tell the patients as well. But I started the medication back March 29th, I think actually was my first injection of 2023. Was it 2024? Now I can't remember. 2024, I want to say actually.
I think it was 2024.
Was it 20? It was, yeah, it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
So March 29th of 2024 was my first injection, and I stopped doing the injections in October of the same year, and I lost probably almost 100 pounds. The food chatter never came back.
You know what, it was 2023 because you've been more than a year
Out.
without medication. Yes.
Because it wasn't
yes.
this past October.
No, it wasn't this past October.
Right.
That's right.
So it was over a year
Yeah.
ago.
Yep.
Wow. So yeah, so 2023, and then I stopped the injections October of 2023, and yeah, I feel amazing, and like I said,
you look amazing, which is
thanks.
we care about that too.
Right. No, because physically, when you look good and you feel good, everything up here kind of falls into place. So no, it truly has been the and then your guidance with the supplements. And I never really took vitamins or really cared enough to know how they're affecting me or how they can affect me. So having started the magnesium, which I still take daily, the vitamin C, the D3, and the K2, that played a huge role in, I think, my weight loss as well.
Absolutely. I think you're talking about your journey is important because it's so similar to many people's journeys, and a lot of people go through that frustration. I have people coming to me from all other diet programs, and a lot of times they're skeptical, which is they should be. I think so. And any new medications that are out there, I'm skeptical, and I want to make sure that they're safe. First of all, we know that they're effective. I've been doing this long enough that they are effective, but I'm always reading, always learning, always up on the latest literature, because I want to know if any adverse effects do happen from any of these medications. I want to be the first to know about it when the data comes out, and so I can guide my patients. And I think that your journey is such a great example, because that yo-yo effect of losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight is so common amongst most people that have had a weight problem. And then the emotional component of it, and the self-blame, and the feeling like, why can other people do it and why can't I do it, is a lot to for
you
people
become
to deal with.
depressed.
Yes, it definitely affects mood in a big way. So I think back when you first started taking the medication, I remember you trusted me, you put your trust in me, which was obviously a big thing, because when you know that you're working with somebody that you trust, I think results generally are better anyway. I think the difference in my approach to weight loss, first of all, I have a family member that has a weight issue, and this has become more of a passion project for me when I first started, especially in that I wanted something that was safe, effective, and that I could master and make it easy enough that people could do it, but also they would have to apply themselves in a way that made sure that they were right on track and dedicated to it. Because if you don't have that dedication, you may lose the weight, but you won't do it in a healthy manner. And I've seen many patients from other practices that they're given this medication and they're just told to take it, increase the dose, on this scale of every 4 weeks. And then they're never monitored to see, are they healthy at the weight that they're at? Mm-hmm. Are they losing too much muscle? Mm-hmm. Are they overall gaining health at the end of their journey? Mm-hmm. So I think that's really where my focus is, especially because of my functional medicine background. I wasn't going to do weight loss that wasn't also an overall wellness approach.
Right, and that's what I tell the patients too. You're looking at the overall, we want you to lose weight, but we want you to be overall healthy. And I feel like that's what sets you apart from these other places, because these med spas and whoever else is running these things, they're not really there for the patient. they're just going in, giving them the drugs, and then being on their way and not, monitoring their overall health. So that I feel like is the biggest difference there. So speaking of supplements, I said one of the biggest game changers for me was understanding the right supplements for my body and what played in a part with the medication. How do you determine what each patient needs when they come in?
So let's talk first about the medications themselves, right? So these are GLP-1 agonists. So the one I started out using semaglutide mostly in my patients, which is a single receptor agonist. It just works on GLP receptors. And it worked great in people. They had great results. However, when tirzepatide, which is a dual receptor agonist, became available, it works on two different receptors in the body, and therefore the efficacy of the weight loss improves, but also it has less side effects. So it's a GLP-1 agonist and a GIP agonist. And the GIP stands for glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide, which is a mouthful. And then GLP-1 is the glucagon-like peptide 1. And these GLP-1 is found naturally in the stomach, so that's where they isolated it. And the fact that these two receptor agonists work together in a patient, we found that the weight loss was better and they had less side effects, as I mentioned earlier. So what tirzepatide really does, it works in many different ways, but it reduces cravings in people. It increases satiety, so you get full faster. It delays gastric emptying, so then when your stomach stays full longer, you're only going to finish maybe half of the plate of food. You're satisfied by the end of it, and you don't feel those hunger cravings in the middle, which I think, and it stops the food noise. There's a big part for a lot of people. Big part of it for a lot of people. And it also works to improve insulin sensitivity in people, which means that their native insulin works better in their bodies at managing the glucose that comes in. It increases uptake of glucose by the cells. So if you don't have the glucose circulating in the bloodstream but is taken up into the cells, now the cells can use it for energy, right? So it works on all those components together. It works on the brain. When we talk about food chatter, that's a big one, right? It also improves the response of the pancreas to insulin. So by doing all those different things, what ends up happening is that by taking this weekly injection of a small dose of medication, for the most part, I tend to use the lowest dose possible to get results in people. And my goal is always about 1 pound of weight loss a week. And out of that, I want the majority of that to be fat, which we can't really control how people lose weight, but yes, we can, right? So what we learned over time is that if you talk to people about how much protein they're taking in,
which is a huge topic,
which I don't think, yes, other practices will say, make sure you're eating protein. However, for me, that is the number one priority, as well as those supplements that you had mentioned earlier. So we do blood work initially when we first get a new patient to screen, make sure that there's no red flags in their blood work. And then once we've checked that blood work, we also follow up later within 6 months, 9 months sometimes, just to see what their cholesterol levels are, what their their lipid balance looks like in their body. And those things are important because what you don't want is to create an environment where you've taken someone's health and made it worse, right?
So what are some red flags? What are some red flags that would stop someone from doing it?
If someone has elevated liver enzymes, for instance, anything going on with their liver at all, I would be very wary of starting the medication, at least to figure out what's going on. That's happened in a few patients where they were on some other supplements or medications that were affecting their liver function. There aren't that many other reasons not to start it because it doesn't affect a lot of other things. So it has effects on the pancreas, it can have effects on the liver, and things like pancreatitis, acute cholecystitis, a gallbladder attack with stones. Those are the adverse effects that can happen in people, not because of these medications, but because of too rapid weight loss for the most part. So,
that's where people might get confused.
That's where they get confused. They think it's related to the medications, but it's not. It's any weight loss out there is potentially going to cause gallstones to develop. And so we monitor that carefully. We look for those any kind of signs and symptoms as we go along. I meet patients frequently enough that we can find those things out early if they're developing, but also not so frequently that it becomes annoying to come in and see me that often, right? We want to be able to make this a normal part of their life. So they take an injection once a week, they're watching what they eat, they're taking the recommended supplements, and you mentioned supplements earlier. There are some supplements that all patients that are on a weight loss journey should be on, and there are some levels in their bodies that should be optimized. For instance, vitamin D is very, very important. It's a pro-hormone. It's not even a vitamin. And if you don't have adequate amounts of vitamin D, I see a lot more side effects in people, a lot more development of adverse
I've heard
outcomes.
too, a low vitamin D, because I think my level was 13 when I came into you.
Yes.
It can hinder weight loss if you
Yes.
have too low of vitamin D, right?
And
right?
it's something that I don't think most people are checking,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate, because yes, the other thing is you get more side effects if you have low vitamin D. So people with nausea, vomiting, any of those kinds of symptoms, they're much more likely to get them if their vitamin D levels are low. That's sort of what I found in my practice.
Yeah.
So we always optimize their vitamin D levels.
Okay.
Therefore, the weight loss is more efficacious,
Mm-hmm.
and they have less side effects. So that combination, of course,
Right.
leads to better
It's
outcomes.
gonna help. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I know we spoke about this before. So one of the biggest misconceptions, which I've come across talking to people too, is that the GLP-1s or tirzepatide is a quick fix. How is that not the case?
Okay, well, it can be a quick fix.
It
So
could.
the thing is, you can lose massive amounts of weight by taking high doses of these medications. Most of what you're going to be losing, though, is muscle mass,
Right.
because there's only so much fat that can be, removed from the body.
Right.
And so if you're misusing these medications, absolutely, you can have very rapid weight loss.
Mhm.
And at the end of that entire journey, you've seen people that look very gaunt and sickly, and people talk about Ozempic face, for instance,
It's a
very
thing.
haggard looking,
Mhm.
hanging skin. Everything I do when I first evaluate the patient is geared towards them not only losing it safely, but also being healthy and looking good at the end of that journey.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it, and we make sure that people are taking all the correct supplements that they need. So each person's supplement list may be slightly different. There are some major core supplements like the vitamin D with K, like magnesium. Magnesium is huge. Every cellular function in the body needs magnesium, and we are all deficient because our food supply is deficient in magnesium.
Yeah.
Vitamin C is another big one. Vitamin C is needed for you to make your own collagen. And so that, along with amino acids, is what helps you make your collagen in the body. And if you're not getting enough vitamin C and you're losing weight, then
So you're
the
just
combination,
deteriorating everything.
yes, exactly. Because you also, as we age, we lose collagen.
Yeah.
As we lose weight, also we lose collagen.
Right.
So our goal is to try to minimize that loss and to maximize forming new collagen as we're doing this process.
So some people, they talk about gaining all the weight back when they stop these medications. I know for me, that was a big fear because of always my ups and downs throughout my life. I'll just speak on my part first on how I've kept the weight off. So like we said, October 23, I stopped. But also talking with you and listening to how you eat and the way that you cook your food and things that you do, I kind of learned and formed a different lifestyle for myself based on your habits. So I always tell people I stopped eating meat and I wouldn't recommend this to everyone, but it's just, I went vegan back in 2020 for about 8 months. It was the best I ever felt. I felt great doing it. I missed fish and yogurt and eggs way too much, so I couldn't sustain that forever. But I said, let me try a pescatarian diet. So occasionally I'll eat like chicken from time to time, but I do eat a very pescatarian-based diet, and I exercise daily. So I do tell people, if you are afraid of gaining the weight back, maintain that those healthy habits during the process of the injections, because that's only going to set you up for success once you stop the injections. I will say, once I stopped the injections, the food chatter never came back. Nothing ever happened, and I feel like that's what people don't want to hear either. They want to hear, this is how the struggle came about and this is how I fixed it. But the struggle never came. So I feel more so than ever, I feel like I always try to really put into people's heads, like form those healthy habits, eat clean as you can, because the foods that you're putting in your body and what we're realizing and becoming so more educated on, like from what is in Europe and the foods in Europe and what we have here, you want to put clean, healthy nutrients in your body, and you want to cook. I try to eat out as least as possible, because you want to make sure that what I'm eating I know what's going in my body. And working out is really, really important. Drinking a lot of water, staying away from alcohol, which we try to do as much as possible. But I feel like that never came back.
So that's interesting that you say that, because for a lot of people that's the case, where that food chatter and noise goes away and it never comes back.
Yeah.
For other people it comes back. We're all so individual, and so the approach has to be individual. I think that when we make the mistake in medicine of treating every single patient the same way is when we don't get the results that we're looking for.
It's not a straightforward answer.
It's not, but for many people, what happened with you, with the food chatter stopping, is very common. And it's great, because those are the people that don't need the medication to continue. But then I've got the other group of people, and usually it's really related to blood sugar and whether people tend to have insulin resistance or
they should be on the medication then, right?
Then yes, then they should be on long term. If I find, so that's another screening in the beginning when I do blood work, I look at their hemoglobin A1C, I look at their fasting glucose. If I see that those are abnormal, I know that that's a person that's going to benefit from long-term use of very low doses of medication for maintenance. Because, you know, at the end of the day, my goal is to get people to lose the weight safely, slowly. If you don't let your body equilibrate to each pound of weight loss over a slow and steady period of time, you're going to yo-yo back and gain the weight back. It's just, it's the way our bodies are made to be, right? Because it makes the body think that you're starving. And when our body goes into starvation mode, it wants to save every single bit of energy for our survival. And so if someone is losing weight very rapidly, they're going to hit a wall at some point where they cannot lose any more weight. It doesn't matter what you do, whether you stop eating even, the body will produce more cortisol, which is, it's a stress hormone. What does cortisol do? It makes you hold on to more fat, because cortisol gets released when we're in a fight or flight response. That when we know that we're in danger from something, that's when it gets released. And so those people will experience that kind of a thing. And you mentioned earlier about, the healthy eating habits. That's a conversation I have every single time the patients visit. The first visit is important to kind of gauge where they are in their lifestyle. But I do notice that even people that don't make those changes initially, after a while, they really actually get on board. And I think it's because they see that it's working, they feel lighter, they feel healthier. A lot of times these medications work on mood. So when you think about a medication that not only stops food chatter in your brain, that you're not constantly thinking about it, but also gives you a mood elevation and energy, suddenly you want to exercise now. Suddenly you care about what you're putting into your body. And maybe the 10th time that you hear me say it, the patient will be like, you know what, I'm gonna cook at home. I talk to people, just not during weight loss, but during all my functional medicine visits, about how important spices and herbs are. So these are not 0-calorie items that you can add to your food that are astronomical in the benefits you get for your health. So that's a conversation I have all the time with patients. Like, go into your pantry, pick out 3 spices, go to the grocery store and buy 3 different herbs. And if you don't like fresh herbs, get dried herbs. They have very good nutritional value, and they can sit in your spice cabinet and be pulled out just to be added to your dishes. And they make a big difference.
100%.
So all those things come together, and they really they make it a success. And they also, what happens is one thing that I really believe very strongly is the patient should not feel responsible for where they are with their weight to the point where they feel guilt. Because what happens is when you add guilt to the mix, that's just creating an environment where you're afraid to fail, and there is no failing in this. We're on a journey together. We're on this weight loss journey.
That's exactly what it is.
And that's what it is, right? So this journey has to happen. And a journey is never a straight line, right? We go backwards in certain things. You may gain a little bit weight. The holidays are tough for everybody. This time of year is actually the perfect time of year to think about a lot of these things, because summer is far away. Everyone's hibernating. It's cold. So why not work on ourselves? Why not start down a journey that helps you get to your goal slowly, steadily, and safely. I think that's really important.
I always tell people to, even for myself, it's like, I feel like it's like 80% psychological. Like, once you're fully committed into this for yourself and for your health, once you start seeing the results or feeling like you have a little bit of more energy, seeing the scale go down, like, then I feel like then you're like, okay, this is working, and then you want to eat healthier and you want to establish those new habits.
And that's where the trust comes in, because if they trust me enough to start, and even if they're not fully committed to it, they see those changes, and now suddenly they're like, okay, let me listen to the rest of what she's saying, because maybe that'll help too, right? So,
and the initial conversation I have with the weight loss patients too, before they come to see you, I always say, you have to trust in her, because not only do you know the medical side of it, but like the functional medicine side with the gut and the supplements and everything that you talk about on a daily basis. Nobody else is going to give that kind of information to them. So
I hope they are. I really hope that more people are starting to combine that into a, because it's a lifestyle. It's a change of your lifestyle.
Yeah.
The way that you live your life determines how you'll be when you're 80 years old, right? Yeah. So you want to make sure that you're making the right choices. But the way that I think I do it and the way that I see you living that lifestyle is that it's actually, you kind of embrace it. Eating those healthy foods, making those healthy choices. Things like, so you mentioned alcohol earlier. Alcohol is a poison to our system. Do I drink? Yes. I enjoy a good cocktail every now and then. Yeah. But, I spent all of January counting the number of drinks that I drank. So I would just jot it, every drink I had, I would jot it in my notes. And at the end of the month, I added it up. Not to necessarily decide that I was going to drink less, but just to monitor myself. And I tell people this all the time. Just take a look at what you're drinking, how many times you're going out, and then at the end of the month, look at your number and say, is this really how many drinks you want to have in the month? And if that can help change even one thing, because at the end of the day, alcohol is not only a poison, but it raises blood sugar. Yeah. It does a lot of bad things to our health. And
increases cravings.
Absolutely increases. Yeah. And one thing is about, the really good thing about tirzepatide and GLP-1 medications is that they reduce cravings, not just for food, but also alcohol. Also, it can help smokers. So there are people out there that they've never, nothing has worked well for them except for smoking sometimes to keep their weight down.
Yeah.
And so if they are committed to wanting to stop smoking, if they're not committed, it's not going to work. But if they are actually committed, but they have a hard time doing it, GLP-1s can help with that because they do reduce cravings in general. And
that nobody knows about that.
That added on to the healthy lifestyle and using the medication safely, that can make a big difference. So I think that we're going to find out more and more about these medications. Does that mean that they're without risks? Absolutely not. I mentioned 2 things that can happen in people: acute cholecystitis, a gallbladder attack, and pancreatitis. I've never had one patient yet, knock on wood, have either one of those things happen. Yeah. But it's because I am so invested in making sure that people are doing things to prevent that, like active prevention, not just I hope they don't develop this or this. No, I'm telling you what things could happen, and I'm telling you how you can prevent them. So that's all part of the conversation.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, not speaking of that, but there are myths about the side effects that come along with these medications. So I know me and you just had this conversation. Personally, I didn't experience any of those side effects. So do you want to talk about the potential of what it is?
Sure, absolutely. So, first I mentioned earlier, we check vitamin D levels on people because if people's vitamin D levels are low, they are more prone to get those side effects. It's just, I've seen it over and over again. And as we correct their vitamin D levels, suddenly they're tolerating it better. But usually I explain to patients nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. I noticed that with tirzepatide, we see a lot more constipation than I used to see with semaglutide, where there was more diarrhea. So it does affect your GI system in different ways, and it's different for each person. And it's dose dependent sometimes. So at a lower dose, you may experience certain side effects, and as you increase your dose, you can have different ones. Other things like insomnia, things like headaches, those things can happen as well. And what I've found in a lot of the patients is they're not hydrating enough. And so when someone gets headaches and they tell me that they started this medication and they developed a headache, how much are you drinking? How much water are you taking in? Sometimes I need to give them minerals on top of just telling them to drink water, because when you give people minerals, it forces the water into cells. So you're basically improving their hydration status. I mean, I think everybody benefits from minerals, but I think that when you start someone off on a weight loss journey and you're already giving them a medication to begin with, and you've got a list of supplements that you want them to take, I don't want to overwhelm them. So sometimes those things are given as needed later to each patient individually. And then the major contraindication to these medications is something called multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome, MEN syndrome. So I ask every patient if they have any family members that have that, in their genetic history, basically. Medullary thyroid cancer is something that was found in laboratory rats and mice when they did the testing. So if anybody has a history of that, that's a contraindication. But it's the good thing about these medications is that their contraindications are rare and side effects are rare. And I think with tirzepatide, they're much less frequent than they used to be with the semaglutide.
Interesting. How do you determine if someone is a good candidate for the GLP-1? So based on just on the blood work alone?
Well,
if somebody
first
wants
a good
to lose
history.
5 pounds?
Oh yeah, someone wants to lose 5 pounds. No, I won't say no. I think that it's not someone that's wanting to lose 5 pounds probably has other things that are going on. Their hormone status has to be checked.
Yeah.
So if they're if they're perimenopausal, maybe that's what's going on, and there are other issues. So we don't always think of weight as being this linear thing of like this many pounds, is healthy, and this and to get to there you need to work out this much or you need to eat this many calories. It doesn't really work out that way.
Yeah.
When we try to count calories, when we try to see how many calories we're burning,
Yeah.
it doesn't correlate to
No.
what someone's weight is necessarily.
No.
So there may be other factors that play a role in there,
Yeah.
and
So hormones are a big part of it.
hormones are a big part of it, and especially for women in those perimenopausal years, which can start in their early 40s. People don't want to hear this, right? They're like, oh my God, but menopause is 10 years away from me, 20 years away from me.
No.
It may be, but the perimenopausal
Right.
period is so long that the hormonal effects can play a big impact on weight. And so if someone came to me in let's say in their mid 40s or early 50s, and their main concern is inability to lose weight, I'm not going to jump on GLPs as the initial thing right away. We'll do some testing to see what's going on, what's their hormone status doing, what's their blood sugar look like, how is their hemoglobin A1C, to get an idea of what their diet is like. And sometimes that 5 pound weight loss might just be dependent on the types of foods that they're eating, when they're eating, things like intermittent fasting. There's just so many aspects to what we can do from a functional medicine approach that I don't want to jump on those medications immediately. So someone needs a 5 to 10 pound weight loss, I don't think it's worth using these medications for that, besides the fact that they weren't the indications weren't really there. I mean, they're actual indications for which patients you want to use them in, and a lot of them have to do with diabetics, but even people that aren't diabetics, if they have a really high cardiovascular risk factor based on their cholesterol levels, for instance, and their blood sugar is fine, they're still a candidate if they're overweight, right? Because they're and that's why we check their lipids to begin with, because what I see in most people is when I check their lipids initially and we check them 6 to 9 months later, they're improved, they're much better. So they already improved their cardiovascular system by doing that, right?
That's why a lot of cardiologists too are recommending these medications, I would assume.
Yes,
Right.
and they should be. If they're not, they should be.
Yeah. At what age do you think it's too young to start these medications, or is there like what age do you recommend?
So the age has dropped significantly. So I think 16 for a lot of them, the medications. I have to look and see now. It may even be lower than that. But there was a point at which it was only adults, and then they because we have an obesity epidemic, right? So there are enough kids that are very overweight and could benefit.
And
the sooner we get them in a normal weight range, the sooner we reduce their risks of a lot of diseases. And so, in children, I would be very wary of the, I don't think that we have the data to support that use yet, but 16 and over, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's very safe.
Would have saved me a lot of problems growing up. What would you say to someone who is hesitant about trying these injections, and they're hesitant, or they're just nervous in general, and they've had kind of like an experience that I had growing up with weight loss? Like, what is your talk with them initially, and how do you guide them into this?
So first of all, anybody that's hesitant to do anything shouldn't start something. They just shouldn't, because I think that there's a cost associated with these medications, both financial and time commitment, right? They have to be committed to put the work into this. But I will give them all the information, and I haven't seen anybody yet that's come to see me for a weight loss concern that has not started the medications, or that they haven't we haven't done a different approach for them. GLP-1s are not the only way to lose weight, right? So we can I've been doing weight loss ever since I've been doing functional medicine, and we have a lot of other things that we do with patients that don't involve injections and medications. Some people have, they're needle phobic and they don't want to get needles. Now there are orals that are available. I haven't used them myself yet, but I just think that the once a week injection approach takes away a lot of the thought process with it. And
the oral is daily?
Yes, I think
really?
I think the oral is daily. I don't know enough about it I haven't looked at it again. Once I got the notification from the compounding pharmacy that they had this available if you want to use it, but my patients are doing so well. And those are very expensive too. So it wasn't like if they were going to save money by using an oral, then I would have probably
Do you recommend the injections over that just to avoid another pill or something going through the system differently?
Yeah, I think, there's always the issue with first pass liver metabolism with any oral medication. So I think doses probably have to be higher because it gets broken down by the stomach acids and things like that. I'd have to read up more on the mechanism to really fully understand if the dosing is very different, oral versus injection. But I just feel like if something's not broke, why try to fix it? And it works well. I think that if I got a patient that was really, really averse to needles, then I would look into it more, and absolutely, because my goal at the end of the day is to find what works for each patient. So, we gear it very individually.
And this is how it started too, the whole tirzepatide with the injection. So I feel like if people knowingly come into your practice and know that this is what is set up for them, then they already aware.
Know what they're, And most of them, I do have people come in that are, I heard somebody's, their stomach, got so backed up, or they had a blockage, they had issues of various sorts, and I've heard of those too. I've read about them. I mean, there have been some adverse outcomes that you can read about in the literature, but I think so much of it is education and making sure that people are doing it correctly. And I think a lot of times when people want too rapid a result, that's a red flag for me, because they're not invested in their long-term health. Functional medicine is about long-term health for the rest of your life. I care what your muscle mass is when you're an 80-year-old woman, and that you have the maximum amount of muscle mass. And same for me at that age, because I look at my mom and I see how, she's lost so much muscle. And so while GLPs are one component of it, their hormone status, as I mentioned earlier, plays a huge role for people, men and women. Very important that, I think that now the pendulum is kind of swinging the other direction, and people are recognizing that hormone health is so important, and that the risks are much lower, especially if started at the right time. There is this timing hypothesis with hormones, that if you start at the right time, you get the most benefits out of it. And I think with the good thing about GLP medications when it comes to weight loss is it doesn't matter about timing. You could do it at any time. Any time is going to be effective, and as long as people are committed to that goal. Long term now, we haven't really touched on what happens for you. Obviously, it was great. You didn't need to, stay on the medication. You didn't need maintenance dosing. Most of my patients fall into either, so I would say it's probably 70-30. 30% of them go off the medication, and out of that, maybe half of them will maintain their weight. So maybe 15% will be able to maintain it like you have. The others will start to gain weight back. And out of the 70% they're on maintenance dosing, we use a very low dose, the lowest dose possible, to stop that food noise and keep their blood sugar under control. And at the same time, we look at dosing intervals that may be a little bit different than a once weekly injection, because they may not need it that often. And if they don't, then we want to give them the lowest dose possible.
And you can increase the time between the two injections.
So that's something that I have done with many patients, where we can go 10 days or 2 weeks between injections, because the half-life of the medication is such, it's still in your system at that time. So when we take our weekly doses, we still have medication left over from our last dose. And so that's why it's effective, that you can space it out in some people. And it's very individual. Some people's food noise comes back very quickly. Other people, once that food noise is gone, it never comes back, like for you.
It was amazing. It truly is. I was telling one of your patients the other day, when I first started taking the injections, one of my favorite snacks was a rice cake with almond butter and a banana on it. I have not had that since I started the injections, because anything that felt like it would be too heavy in my stomach was such a turn off. So ever since then, like, carbs is not really, certain carbs that I know, just like we said, like the granola or something like that, but something that I feel would be too heavy in my stomach, still to this day,
You have no interest.
I have no interest in, which is kind of like, sometimes, but then I'm like, you know what, it's doing good in my body, not being there. So we talked about protein too, and I think that was one of the things I have a lot of these conversations with women in general on their weight loss journey. Protein is such an important part of maintaining in your system for muscle. And I know that was one of the biggest fears for me, is losing this weight. Even though I work out consistently, losing muscle mass for longevity reasons is scary, because you want your bones and your muscles to be healthy. So what are some good proteins that you would suggest, or how much protein are people supposed to eat? Because I feel like there's so many different variable things, different opinions of how much protein somebody should intake every day.
It's actually different for each individual. So if someone's very active, if they're lifting weights and they're doing a lot of cardiovascular exercises, they're going to need more protein than someone who's sedentary.
Yeah.
But there are some minimums, so you look at 75 grams minimum of protein for women, 100 to 150 grams of protein minimum a day for men. That's when they're not exercising. Okay, so once you start to work out, your need increases, because also, if you did just one without the other, meaning if you just took the protein without any exercise, it's not going to give you those benefits. Right. You're still going to lose muscle mass. So you have to be doing something to challenge those muscles in order to grow and to maintain.
To feed the muscles,
exactly,
basically.
Right. In order to get that protein where it needs to go, we're already breaking down that protein into its amino acids. So it's there, but now we have to use it effectively, right? And
like you said, feed the muscle. And is it true that after a person works out, they should be intaking protein, right after that workout?
There's a lot of, I was reading about this recently, and some people say have the protein before the workout, and then others say after. What I've basically found with my patients, it doesn't matter. Work it into your schedule. I'm so practical when it comes to the approach of good health. I never.
It shouldn't be complicated.
It shouldn't be complicated.
Right.
If your schedule permits you to have your protein shake in the morning and then eat healthy, because to me, food is always the answer before supplements, before medications. Always food first.
What's your favorite quote?
Food first.
Food is thy medicine.
Yeah, food is thy medicine.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I love that quote because it really.
It's true.
It's not only is it true, but it also changes the focus to where food should be appreciated and enjoyed. And so if we're going to be one of those people that are just popping pills left and right in order to make up the deficiencies in our system, where's the joy in that? Eating it should be joyful.
Yeah.
So I feel like we always want to prioritize healthy foods. So your protein sources from really good meats, fish, lentils. I'm really big. I eat fish, and lentils are a big part of my diet. There's people will talk about all kinds of things that lentils have problems, and lectin and all these other things that they talk about. I personally feel like everything in moderation. If you like to eat red meat, eat it in moderation. If you like to eat chicken, that's fine.
Right.
Whatever source of protein you use should be the cleanest source.
Yeah.
Grass-fed, organic if possible, eggs. All those kind of sources of protein are great. I think it depends on each individual, but one thing that I want to touch on is what you had mentioned earlier about, eating the chicken and the broccoli or the chicken and the salad. People that get into trouble when they are looking for easy techniques for weight loss or weight maintenance, if they're not eating a variety of foods, they're missing out on those minerals and vitamins that we naturally get from all the different types of vegetables and fruit and meats and lentils, etc. that we eat. If you're not eating enough variety of food, you are going to be missing nutrients.
There was something I read the other day that said we should be intaking 50 to 60 different types of vegetables a week. And when you think about it, how many people actually eat, and I try to do it, but it's hard.
It's hard. It's not easy, right? And so when you go to the grocery aisle, right, the produce aisle, you want to make sure that you're just getting a variety of colors. That's very important, because the color actually determines what type of nutrients, what kind of phytonutrients are in there. So if you're not mixing up with your greens and your orange and your red and white, even onions, things like that, they all have really good
different
nutrients in them that you have to, So eating the rainbow, what does that expression mean? It means eating things of different colors, right? And we're not talking about Skittles, we're talking about real food.
No.
In all the different colors
Yeah,
that, you know, that will keep us healthy. And
I don't think people realize that either. I don't think I realized that.
I don't think people realize that. I think that that's one of those things that, you know, maybe our moms and our grandmothers knew, but it's sort of like lost in translation as over time. Yeah, I think that people don't realize how important that is because and the other thing is, I say this all the time, our soil is nutritionally depleted compared to 50 years ago, compared to 100 years ago. So why do we need supplements now? It's because our soil is depleted and we don't get those things naturally. You know, this one little piece of broccoli now versus 50 years ago doesn't have the same nutritional value.
Yeah.
So that's super important.
It's super important. Where do you see the future of these medications going?
I mean, I'm hoping that what these medications will do is become less expensive and more widely available to people, as long as we see the safety profile stays as good as it is. I mean, are there no adverse effects? There are adverse effects. I mean, there's things that come out all the time that, you know, but nothing to the point that it would make me stop using them. But one thing that I will say is that I'm a skeptic when it comes to any medications, and I'm always reading up to see, because you know what I don't want to do is be like the Pollyanna that this is only going to do good. No, because there might be adverse things. We've seen it with other weight loss drugs in the past, so we're always looking, and I think that as long as they're used safely, and hopefully over time they'll be more widely available, and maybe the indications will be broader as well. Maybe people with less weight to lose can use them effectively. And then anybody with blood sugar issues. You know, at the end of the day, inflammation and high blood sugar are the two things that age us and that cause disease, right? So if we can control that's the other thing we didn't touch on. GLP-1 medications have been shown to reduce inflammation from conditions like different inflammatory arthritis, autoimmune conditions. People do better overall.
Well, we mentioned that before, the PCOS, like help with conditions like that.
So PCOS, that's a great example, right? Because it's a syndrome where basically the insulin in the body doesn't work correctly, and people end up with insulin resistance. And people think it's it's these heavy women that develop this. No, it can happen in people that are normal weight. I have PCOS. That's something my daughter has PCOS, and you don't have to be overweight to have that. So for me, when I look at these medications, long-term use in those kind of patients is very beneficial, because it makes what I said in the beginning about how it affects insulin and glucose. Well, that's exactly what we need in PCOS, right? So people are prescribed things like metformin for PCOS. The GLP-1s work so much better.
I was going to say, because metformin does other things too.
Right. Metformin has some potential adverse effects, which I don't really want to get into, but basically it's working on your mitochondria, and so it can cause some problems with the mitochondria that it's better indicated in some patient populations than others. Someone who works out a lot, they want their mitochondria functioning really at the highest level. So all these things metformin is not the best for those patients. So
it's so funny because all these things that I read and watch on Netflix, all these these documentaries on weight loss and on how to eat clean, your mitochondria, your bio, whatever it's called, like that microbiome.
Yes.
Like that's a huge topic for people.
These medications have been found to change the microbiome in people too. There's just so much we don't know yet that we're just kind of starting to learn about them, and I think that I'm hoping that in 20 years they're still around and being used, because that means that we didn't find anything really bad happening with them, like we haven't yet, and I hope it continues that way.
I mean, just from my own experience going through this journey, I'll say, someone who has struggled for years found you, and when we started doing this together, I was skeptical, I was very nervous, but it truly has been a game changer for me. And I tell people all the time that I wish I found out about this years ago. I wish there was something like this years ago, because not only is it a tool to help you lose weight, I've changed, my life has completely changed. The way that I look at food, the way that I look at fitness, overall health, like what I'm intaking, or where I'm getting my food from, or what I'm eating. I feel like a lot of people, and I hope that people on these journeys kind of fall into that same path, because for someone who has struggled and constantly will always struggle, I feel, because I feel like it's hard to turn off that piece of your brain, because I am so focused and committed on staying how I am. But yeah, no, these medications, I will say to anyone and everyone, do not be afraid of them. Like they are such an amazing tool, not only for you to lose weight, but for your mental health. Like I feel like it's such like a mood booster, and it gives you clarity. Like I've had so much clarity, and you don't come out of that. It just kind of helps you sustain that in your everyday life.
You know, I just wanted to mention something about the mood. I had a patient come see me after she had already done the GLPs with another practice, and she became very depressed while taking the medications. Well, immediately, you know, right when I heard that, I was like, I have to check her vitamin D level. Her vitamin D level was 7. Like literally, it's even lower than yours was. I've seen single digit vitamin D levels. We fixed her, so I had her stop the medications, everything that she was doing. We fixed her vitamin D. I looked at a few other blood markers, and we worked on those. When she started the medications back up again, she didn't have any of those kind of symptoms. So I think that, you know, you mentioned they're a tool. They are absolutely one tool that can't be used alone, and just everything else about this person is ignored. You have to be looking at them, you know, as a whole, and working on them as a whole. But the mood component of these medications is pretty dramatic. I see that the majority of people improve their mood significantly when they're on these medications, and I think the effects last beyond, which is really interesting. Right, because you feel that way.
100%. I feel like that doesn't just end when you stop taking the injections, especially if you've maintained having that, like you said, you take that as one tool and then utilize that, and you're putting a lot of, you're doing something that you're investing in yourself with. And why use that? You have to use that wisely, you know, and you have to change the way you're eating, change your fitness habits, and you know, like you said, you're a functional medicine doctor. Like they should be able to talk to you and utilize your knowledge and what you come to them with, and we give them guidance for nutrition. You give them an outline of what they need to eat, or foods that are, you know, better than others. And you know, for me, I help guide them, and hopefully like some type of fitness thing that they can do. And we try to set, you know, the patients up for success, and I feel like that's why they genuinely, it works for them, and they see the results because of that overall plan that we're setting them up with, and we're not just giving them an injection and being like, here you go, good luck.
Right, see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, good luck to you. Good luck to you.
Right.
So, is there anything else that you want to touch base on?
I think besides the GLP-1 medications, weight itself is such a loaded topic that I think that I want everybody to know, like this is just speaking to everybody that listens to this, that don't blame yourself for where your weight is. A lot of genetics play a role in that. Lifestyle, maybe the way that, you know, you ate as a child, or didn't get homemade food maybe necessarily, or quality food, but every single day is another opportunity to change that. So when people say, I wish I'd known this earlier, like you even said, you wish you'd known this earlier, aren't you happy where you are now? Right? Because it doesn't matter when you start that journey. That process can happen, and the benefits from that can happen at any time. So day one is today. Just start that journey today and stop blaming yourself, because the blame doesn't help. The guilt only makes it that much harder to get to where your goal is. And I think that that's taking the guilt component out, and the individual person's responsibility of how they got there. We just remove that and we say, okay, this is where we are today. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I think taking that out, like you said, plays a huge role. And don't worry about what you've done in the past, or what didn't work, or what did work. Stop blaming people who may have impacted your weight in a negative way, and focus on where you are now. Take the tools that you're given, the knowledge that you're given, and make an informed decision on how you want to move forward with your own weight loss journey. And it truly is a weight loss journey, because it doesn't end. Like it doesn't end. It should be like a lifestyle change. So I just want to thank you for changing my life.
You're welcome. And thank you for talking to all my patients, because I'll tell you, sometimes that's the difference between them continuing down the path, and that you have helped them so much. So I really appreciate you for that too.
No, of course. Well, listen, I'm here to help them because you've helped me so much. And like I said, my journey has been a struggle my entire life. So for someone who is struggling, I know what it's like. So if I can help just even one person out of 100, I've done my job. So
And you do your job amazingly. Thank you.
I love you.
I really appreciate you.
Thanks.
Love you.
So, didn't want to cry, but here we are. I just want to thank everyone for joining us on today's conversation. It's definitely an emotional and you know, it hits home for the both of us in different ways, and you know, and we're here for you. And if you ever need or want to talk or have your consultation with Dr. Mann regarding your own weight loss journey, we're here for you. Information will be below on how you can contact us, and we look forward to helping you on your own weight loss journey. Dr. Mann, thank you again. I love you.
Thank you, Jen. Love you too.
Love you.
Thank you, everyone.